Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. We have Kai on the board with not only his first match win, his first two game wins.
And in one match, it's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, that match was pretty intense. I guess you guys had a bunch of different, like, I guess key fights, and how did you end up deciding what to go for, like when you could have tutored in the various spots?
Well, in the third game, there were a couple of spots where I probably could have played better. Like the first spot where was when a main phase digged after I counted his treasure cruise, and I was pretty
Right.
sure he didn't have force of will. I could have digged for a black lotus into show and tell, then a black lotus into show and tell into omniscience into Edelschnorn, but then I actually don't have anything else. And I thought there
Yeah.
was a good chance he was like really out of gas at this point, so I just took demonic tutor and show and tell. But like I would guess he drew the pyroblast on his next turn. Like I think if he has another pyroblast in his hand, he probably doesn't tap out for treasure cruise on his previous turn.
He
But
he actually had the pyroblast the whole time. So had you gone with that line of Lotus Show and Tell, he had swords also. He goes pyroblast swords
yeah,
and you just have no
that
cards in your hand.
that was the main reason because like the O's resolved so fast that I expected
Yeah.
him to have wear and tear as well. Like I figured, if I don't have a dig through time or any sort of card draw with the omniscience, I don't really want to go all in on that. And
Right.
yeah, later on, there were a couple of decisions where, I mean, the demonic tutor was kind of tough, and then I probably shouldn't have attacked with the Grizzlebrand in the last turn. When I won the coin flip in the upkeep,
Yeah.
it's probably safer to stay back because, like, Grizzlebrand on defense prevents Time Walk as an out for him, I think, because that's double lifelink on
Yeah, that's true.
when blocking.
Attacking stops Lightning Bolt, but it's unlikely he has that in his deck, even if he had it anywhere, and I don't think he does.
Yeah, I
So
only expected him to have one sword as well, so
yeah,
I thought there was no more removal incoming.
yeah, they're not going to draw a bunch of. They don't want to draw a bunch of swords, so I expect that you're right. They're not going to have like three in their deck.
Yeah, but basically, I mean, I drew good cards. Like after he Gitaxian probed me, I drew Force of Will into a land into a misdirection, I think, and like
Yeah,
both of those were super necessary to win that game. So,
yeah.
also,
What
I
was
mean,
really
he did
okay.
draw the Ancestral when we were in a stalemate. So I mean, that's also a pretty good card to draw.
True, he ancestral into a bunch of land as it turned out, but yeah, it was interesting that was one of those vintage matches of which we had a bunch where had either player been able to see the other player's hand, they would have won easily. Like both you guys could have, I think, taken different lines if you could see the other player's hand. Not that it makes those lines right, but it is funny that fighting over things that you don't need to, or end up Dave with double pyroblast in hand and you just completely didn't guess that. The
Yeah.
you,
Well, I was certain that he would only have that he wouldn't have that Pyroblast anymore. I mean, tapping out for Treasure Cruise with the Pyroblast in hand seemed odd, but I mean, if he had more removal spells, sure.
yeah,
It's not
he
like I
had a
kill him
swords
on
to
my turn or
classics.
something. Yeah.
Right, right.
I did board out the Gitaxian probes, which is super bad in this kind of
Yeah.
stalemate counter battles. But I mean, I went down to 2 O's for the third game because I figured he would have more cages in, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
So going to this next round, we have the last two undefeateds here. We've got Chris Pikula against Eric Froehlich with the first Shops mirror match we've had since season one. I don't even know if we had one in season one. So we have not seen a lot of workshop on workshop action, but we're going to see that today.
But it's actually different decks, right? I think only Eric has
They are.
Forgemasters.
Yeah, the biggest difference between the decks, besides they have a ton of cards that overlap, of course, is that Chris is playing Null Rods and Phyrexian Metamorphs and Sculpting Steel, whereas Eric has Kuldotha Forgemaster, some one of Tutor for in that sense. So Eric has cards like Steel Hellkite, Wormcoil Engine, Staff of Nin, Sundering Titan. And according to Eric, he and I think Chris agreed with him on Twitter today that Chris is favored because of all the clone effects, but we'll see what ends up playing out.
Yeah, I got the same problem as I had previously. I actually don't see the screen on Skype.
All right, we'll fix
I
that in
mean,
a second, but it
I'm
is
in the game, so I just don't see the
okay.
hands. But it's not the end of the world.
It is interesting seeing workshops battle because they're both very good at playing around all the like mana denial cards. But sometimes you actually can just screw your opponent if you're on the play. You lead with a sphere or two, and then if you have a strip mine or wasteland for their workshop, you can actually win a game by lockout. But the games that don't go like that, both players have essentially infinite mana, can cast all their spells, and not a lot of the spells do anything.
Yeah, the thing is, I was wondering how aggressively do you mulligan in this matchup because there's so many bad cards in your deck.
I think you can afford to mulligan pretty aggressively. Like both players are happy with their double workshop hand here, but cards like Thorn of Amethyst and Chalice of the Void, they're just not cards you want in your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, this
What
is a
what are the good
matchup.
cards? What are
Uh,
the
the,
good cards? The good cards for Eric are obviously the Forgemasters, but what are Chris's good card?
Chris wants a no rod to stop Forgemaster, I believe. Though Phyrexian Metamorph is amazing because it always is tied for first with whatever's in play. You also have Lodestone Golems just because they have good power and toughness. Eric's one of like Steel Hellkite is particularly amazing. Dismember is good for Chris too because it can give him the advantage in the creature battles.
And it can kill Forgemaster, which is
And some of the weakest cards are like Tanglewire. Eric's got double Tanglewire Thorn, so very clear keep from Eric based on the double Workshop and the Metamorph, but having double Tanglewire Thorn isn't great either.
The Tanglewires also seemed kind of lackluster in the match against you. I mean, they just weren't doing that much.
Yeah, I don't love Tanglewire as a card, but I mean, there's some games it's exactly the card you want, but there's other games where it's completely dead. It's not like a Thorn where Thorns are always pretty good. So Eric deciding whether I guess he could play a Thorn of Amethyst here if he really wanted to. They're both just like, all right, I guess I'll play this Thorn, even though it doesn't really help or hurt either of them a ton. I guess it's slightly better for Ifro. He's got a lot more mana. But based on these current hands, no one's going to do anything for multiple turns here.
Yeah, they're just sitting there doing nothing. Yeah. Then when someone draws something, they can start copying.
Yep, that's what's going to happen. This is the matchup, which is really funny. I played the Mirror Sum, even though I don't want to admit it, where you play Chalice of the Void for real weird numbers, because you have, sometimes 15 mana. You can play Chalice for really random numbers based on like one-ofs in their deck.
And there's a Tanglewire that's not doing anything at all.
It'll time walk Chris, except what Ifro doesn't know is that Chris didn't have a spell he could play anyway, or at least one that he wanted to play. And there's the Chalice that might come out for like if Chris can play a Chalice for 6, which is not unbelievable, it is good for him if he draws more work.
He needs Academy for that, right?
You might just run out of Academy is the main way to do that. He could play a Chalice for 0 here. That doesn't seem very good. Yeah, this this ends up being a pretty funny matchup.
I mean, right now it's pretty boring, actually. There's actually nothing going on.
Post-board gets a little better. All right, here's some action. Now, Ifro, he can play double Forgemaster this turn. And then I guess that lets Chris go end of turn. He can't cast Dismember, so he has to untap. Actually, Tanglewire is being relevant here, because Chris is prevented right now from playing both Metamorph and Dismember. And he can't, and Chris can't, the Thorns are really good here too, because Chris can't cast Dismember right now, so Ifro will be able to land the double Forgemaster. So I think Ifro is very far ahead here.
Yeah, I mean, if that resolves, that should be it, right? I mean, if he gets to untap.
I assume if he gets to untap, he doesn't have any card that ends the game in one shot, but once you start getting a Steel Hellkite, that seems pretty tough to beat.
He certainly has Blightsteel Colossus, right?
I don't believe he does, actually.
Oh, okay.
Let me take a look at the lists here, but yeah, he does not have Blightsteel. I guess against the decks, most decks that aren't workshops, you can get Sundering Titan, and that'll end the game reasonably well.
It certainly ended the game against me. That was plenty.
But yeah, Ifro's one-ofs are Sundering Titan, which you keep in just because it's a giant monster. Duplicant, Steel Hellkite, Wormcoil Engine, and then the Metamorph that he's playing right now.
Oh, the Dismember comes in response to the Metamorph, obviously.
But he can't, though, because of the double Thorn.
Well, he's trying to, but now he realized that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, the Thorn, the Thorns pulled their weight here, both Ifro's and Chris's.
Yep.
And then post-board, they both get to bring in Precursor Golem, which is not a card I would have expected to see in Vintage, but here we are.
Well, I mean, we had the Juggernaut in the first season of Vintage Super League.
We did.
I didn't expect that one.
I think the Darksteel Juggernaut from Season 1 got talked about more than any other card in any deck.
Was that even good enough for any constructed format before?
I
don't think so, right?
Without rehashing the argument, no, there's no way.
They made it into Vintage.
So here, Ifro is making Chris tap 3 permanents with Tanglewire. Chris, if he wants to cast Dismember, has to leave up Mox Emerald and Ancient Tomb, which would mean that he'd have to tap Thorn and double Workshop, which means he can't play his own Metamorph here, unless he draws Workshop.
Yeah, he needs to draw a workshop
Oh
right
wow,
now.
that would have been an amazing draw had he known he was going to draw it. But because he didn't, he's unable to cast Null Rod this turn. Because he didn't, he shouldn't have left Workshop
Uh,
up. But the Thorn of Amethyst strikes again.
non-creature spells. No Null Rod for you.
Yeah,
But even if he resolves Null Rod, he might just lose to the 3/5 beatdown.
Yeah, if Chris resolved Null Rod though, it probably would buy him enough time to go dismember into his own Metamorph. Maybe not, but I think it would have given him a shot at least. Now, Ifro's gonna get to use the Forgemaster. And I assume Steel Hellkite's pretty tough to beat here.
Yeah,
Because
that has to be his best option.
Yeah, because Ifro can activate it for 5, and that means even if Chris metamorphs the Forgemaster, Ifro can then sack Forgemaster end of turn, plus Tanglewire. Actually, I guess he has to sack a third permanent, so plus Thorn, and then attack and steal Hellkite.
So that Tanglewire that I was mocking earlier, foolishly, actually
Yeah.
won Eric's game.
Oh yeah, it was amazing here. Though Nora does stop Steel Hellkite. It is an activated ability, not a triggered ability, even though you have to hit them first. So Norod could make it so, but still, if Eric's turning his Moxes into Steel Hellkites, eventually he's just going to win with the 5/5s.
Yeah, he's just winning with the flyers. That's good enough. He doesn't need all these artifacts anymore. Like, even the Stone of Amethyst is probably. I mean, that has done his work.
Yeah.
Once the Tanglewire is gone, Chris has so much mana. Oh, Eric drew something big.
Looks like he's just running out Tanglewire to have more. I mean, you might as well play all your permanents here. Actually, the second Tanglewire is going to be really relevant too. Chris can't even cast Metamorph now. Well, looks like Ifro is going to be up a game here pretty soon, despite saying this was a horrendous matchup for him. He didn't say it was horrendous. He said it was of the 3 decks he's going to face, this is the hardest matchup.
Okay.
And Chris actually seemed to agree with him, thinking that having the 5 copy effects in the main deck is a little better than having the Forgemaster, especially since Dismember is also a very, very relevant card from Chris's point of view.
Yeah, after sideboard, Chris has 4 Dismember, anti-boards, and another copy effect with Sculpting Steel.
Yeah.
That's probably solid. And then he has 2 Crucible of Worlds, which I also suspect are very good in this matchup.
He does, though. Ifro's sideboard is all cards for the mirror. He's got Duplicate, 3 Crucible of Worlds, 2 Ghost Quarter, 2 Precursor Golem, a Triskelion, and 2 Dismember.
Well, the Triskelion doesn't come in, right?
I think it does. You just have too many bad cards to take out, right? Don't you want to take out all your Chalices, Spheres, Thorns, Tanglewires? Like you want to take out more than 15 cards.
But I assume the Triskelion is for Delver matchups, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, it has to be. And Steel Hellkite?
It could be Steel Hellkite. It could also be Sundering Titan. But I guess Steel Hellkite still you can just pump it to do more damage. And then next turn, Chris is getting Tanglewire down to just a lone Workshop. So you're figuring at most, or I guess 2 Workshops. So Chris could play 2 Metamorphs next turn, actually. It's actually kind of interesting which one you get here. Though I guess because you can get Duplicate the second time, getting I don't know, maybe getting Sundering Titan, hitting for 7, and then next turn getting Duplicate to Duplicate whatever Chris plays is something.
I mean, he attacks for 10, right? With the Forgemaster too?
He could attack with the Forgemaster if he wanted to not use it the second time.
I mean, getting Chris down to 4. Chris can't kill the Forgemaster anymore if he's on 4 life.
And it makes
he can draw the Black Mox, I guess.
Yeah, but it makes playing Metamorphs more punishing too.
I mean, now Chris can copy a lifelink creature. Also, Eric can just sacrifice it. Yeah, that's probably why he got Wormcoil Engine.
And he's just gonna pass.
Yeah, he's planning to just sack it in response to the copy effect if that happens.
And then I guess revoke Mox Emerald here. So now, when Chris puts Metamorph on the stack, I imagine you sack Wormcoil.
Oh, main phase?
Oh, he's main phase sacking it. Interesting.
Another Tanglewire?
Oh, yeah. I guess that's actually just lethal, isn't it? Yeah. Ifro's doing all these things very well. Just going deep with Tanglewires and Wormcoil Engines.
Yeah, I don't think Chris has
Tanglewire is just the best card in the matchup, apparently.
Can't argue with the winner.
Something like that.
You think he's leaving them in?
I think they're probably better than. I mean, I have to imagine that Sphere and Thorn. I mean, Thorn makes Dismember a little worse, but Chalice seems bad. Some combination of Sphere, Thorn, and Tangleware seem bad. So, and Trinisphere is also really bad. So they have so many cards they don't want.
Yeah, but Tangleway on the draw.
Chris does have Tabernacle. I mean, it's not for this matchup. I wonder if it's better than some of the random cards. If you like Null Rod, Tabernacle, Strip Mine them or something.
That's not coming in, is it? I can't imagine.
I would hope not, but Chris has the 8 Sphere effects and the 3 Chalices too that, don't seem all that great. Ghost Quarter is just straight up Strip Mine in this matchup.
Yeah, can't get anything.
And then, I mean, No Rod stops Forgemaster. You could play Grafdigger's Cage. That also stops Forgemaster, but it doesn't, unless you really, it doesn't seem that great, but maybe you end up running that. I mean, there are a lot of cards you don't want.
He could bring in Cage, I guess. Maybe like 1 or 2 copies. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, and I could see the player on the play wanting some number of Sphere of Resistance or Thorn of Amethyst. But it seems almost random whether who Sphere or Thorn is going to hurt more. Like, it hits Dismember out of Chris, so I guess that's a little more than what Ifra has. Like Thorn, for example, but Sphere hits everything. I don't know. It seems, again, I'm not sure exactly why you'd want, like, what the strategy is with those. Like, maybe you leave them in because their other cards are worse, but you can just play them and hope they work, right? There's not a whole lot of, like, planning for it.
Eric has 2 Dismembers of the sideboard too, but Chris is going up to 4, so...
Yeah. Yeah, and Eric
hurting Chris a bit more.
Yeah. So Chris's hand is quite strong. Eric's hand looks pretty lackluster. He doesn't have enough mana to cast anything but Dismember. But it might be fine on the draw because you can Dismember and then you can cast Metamorph on turn 3 if you've drawn just a normal land, and obviously if you draw a Workshop, then you're in really good shape. Looks like they're both running it. Once you have Crucible in play too, you feel pretty safe.
That's that's probably his opening. Yeah.
Yeah. You would start that way just because if you do Workshop anything else and then get Strip Mine, you feel you feel very silly. Chris has 6 Strip Mines total after board, and so he's drawing to one of those right now.
He's really hoping to see one of those. And Eric is hoping for the Workshop, I guess. Like, I don't think he has one, does he?
Not in his hand right now, but he can cast Dismember now.
And there's a Null Rod.
Yeah, Null Rod. I mean, it hurts Ifra more than it hurts Chris, so he's going to have it in. But in this particular hand, it's not spectacular.
It's kind of tempting to cast it right now, I think, because Eric didn't have a Workshop, obviously. So he might be holding back like a Black Lotus or something.
Yeah, it cuts off Eric's top decks a little better too, because even if you assume he doesn't have any of those cards, he might draw like a Soul Ring or a Lotus or a Mox and be able to cast something a turn ahead of time. Also, Chris doesn't have anything else to play here, right? I mean, he can play Norod and he could play Revoker, but that doesn't even seem like it accomplishes a whole lot. I guess he just plays it as a 2-1 and blind names. There's not a whole lot you name to begin with, so yeah, you might as well.
Guess he's Mutavault and attacking with the Factory now? That's not that much he can do.
Yeah, Chris just got, just traded for a Dismember, and I guess he just plays his 2-2-mana artifacts here. Actually, with a Null Rod in play, there's not a whole lot you can name with Revoker that you care about, right? I mean, you can name...
Well, Forgemaster, just to be sure.
Though, looking at these players' lists, once this Null Rod is in play, neither player has a way to remove it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Forgemasters are just 3/5 for 5.
That's like above the average card in their deck. Like,
I'm 5/3 for 4 without an ability seems quite a bit better.
Yeah. Cloning Crucible is good here. That protects you from random strip mines.
Well, also he has a Wasteland in hand, so
Yeah, but Chris has his own Crucible, so now they can just. I guess it fogs the Mishra's Factory's Mutavaults, or one a turn, which is nice. These are the kind of games that can be set up to go for a long time. Because with the Norod in play, there's going to be no, exciting Forgemaster turns. They both have Crucibles, so no one's getting mana screwed.
well, Chris is attacking for 6 this turn, putting Eric to 8.
Yeah.
That's
But next turn, if Eric doesn't have a land drop, he can still just go Wasteland, replay Wasteland, pass with Mishra's Factory up as a 3/3 blocker, and then I guess Chris does have Dismember there. Oh no, it's not even a 3/3 blocker until he has another mana, because once it's active, Norod stops it.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, the attack plan is happening.
Chris might want to just run out Metamorph on a Revoker. It's kind of a low value play, but he's got all the pressure now.
I think so. I think you want to do that right now.
Yeah.
Can you name Assembly Worker to shut it down from the pumping ability?
Yeah, you can name Mishra's. You can name Mishra's Factory, right? So, it's non-land. Yeah, Revoker's not Needle. So, because this turns off mana abilities. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, now he's thinking if he wants to do that.
Assembly Workers actually can't do anything anyway, because once they're active, they can't be used.
Oh right, yeah, pretty useless. Yep.
You could name Assembly Worker because that's also an actual card.
And it's a beatdown plan.
Yeah.
I think that's actually looking really good for Chris with the dismemberment hands.
This might end a little faster because though Ifro drew a workshop, so he can play like a Lodestone Golem. And now if Chris wants to cast Dismember, he has to tap Ancient Tomb and one of his two creature lands here that he wants to attack with.
Yeah, Chris really wants to draw Academy, I guess. That's probably the best draw.
Academy tends to be a decent draw, though. Again, both players do end up with like tons of mana if the game goes too long because they have so many mana sources in their deck.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Eric has a Wasteland on top of casting a blocker.
Yeah.
Might be able to stop the bleeding.
If Chris doesn't draw a mana source here, well, there we go. you called it. Chris drew the Academy, so now he can Wasteland and activate both his creatures. Otherwise, he would not have been able to, Dismember and activate both. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to attack with either, and that would have been very different. But now Ifro's getting attacked with 4 creatures, and he can stop one of them. He does get to trade a Mishra's Factory for a Revoker, then replay Mishra's Factory, but I don't know.
It might be better to double Wasteland, actually, just to on the next turn.
Yeah. It is overall value to trade Mishra's Factory for a non-land creature, but I don't know if Ifro's going to live to see the benefits of that value.
Yeah. Phyrexian Revoker beatdown might just get the job done.
It is funny that in Vintage is the most powerful format, but because all the cards are good at stopping other cards, you end up with games ended by 2 mana. Chris played 3 mana 2/1 that he has to pay 2 life to play in this game.
Or hardcasting Elishnorn.
Yep, hardcasting
in your case last week.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good play in Limited. I like it.
Oh yeah, casting Elishnorn's real great in Limited. Well, playing Mishra's Factory from hand is worse than playing it from anywhere else, but yeah, I think Ifro's dead here. Is that accurate? It looks like it.
Yeah, next turn he can...
He can stop 2 of the 3 attackers, but he can't stop the 3rd. Because Mishra's Workshop doesn't activate Mishra's Factory, though you would think flavorfully it would, but because it's not able to, Ifro at best he can have 2 blockers.
Yeah. You can Wasteland one of the lands, then cast a blocker, but that's still not enough.
Yeah, either way it's 2, so...
Like double Tangle Wire doesn't do it? No.
As before, some, the Workshop on Workshop beatdown is always pretty funny.
Yep. So, and it's 1/1.
All you're really looking for is a handful of workshops and just creatures. you just don't want to draw too many of those spells. I mean, Dismember is fine, but you'd rather just draw the creature and have them cast the Dismember.
And the workshop wasn't even that great this game. I mean, like the only thing he powered out with the workshop was the Crucible, which didn't do anything at all.
That's true. I guess Ifro cast a Lodestone Golem, but Chris didn't use Workshop for anything, really. He would have rather almost just had a normal land so he could use his factories. Wow, looks like the Tabernacles did come in, and
that's kind of surprising.
Ifro has a 4-land plus Mana Crypt hand. Chris has a 6-land hand. They're both just snapping it off. Though playing Mana Crypt is super dangerous in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, like in my last game, I went, I think 3-3 in flips, and if I went 2-4 in coin flips, I might have lost that game, actually.
Yeah.
It adds up pretty quickly.
It does, and this game, there's no way to remove it, so...
Well, I mean,
besides
you have to keep a 4 Wasteland head, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems...
Yeah, the 4 Wasteland hand's great.
And the Tabernacle in case Eric gets something into play.
Yeah, it has synergy with all the Wastelands.
Yeah.
I wonder if Ifro just goes... I mean, my assumption would be to play a Sphere first, but I guess he just wants to get the beatdowns going. You just blind name... I guess you don't need to blind name Black Lotus because Chris isn't playing it.
Wait, he's got random Moxes over Black Lotus again?
Yep. That was a hotly contested debate last season. He's got 3 null rods in his deck, but... and a bunch of spheres, but yeah, that's not even
it just seems like to me that the deck wants to cast 2 of the 2-mana lockdown pieces in the first turn, and you do that either with Workshop and Mox or with Land and Lotus. But I mean, I actually don't know anything about decks. So
I like Ifro's play here. He led with Ancient Tomb, by the way, because of Wasteland, and I imagine now he plays Mishra's Factory. That way, if he draws Crucible, he can go Workshop Crucible. I mean, if Ifro draws a Crucible, he could just lock Chris out here.
This could be another game decided by Phyrexian Revoker beatdown.
Yeah.
And more Wastelands.
Yep, Chris is just on the Wasteland plan, and when you have millions to start with.
And Eric has, I think he has triple Crucible, right?
Yeah, and he just drew one, so he gets to go Workshop Crucible, and now Chris is under the gun.
Yeah, now Chris has a ton of Wastelands that don't actually do anything.
Chris can play Tabernacle and just kill the Revoker immediately, which may be his best play.
I wonder if that's correct from Eric. It might be better to just play the Wasteland and say go, and hope that Chris wastes him again.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be really good for him. Basically, it's a time box. Another free attack, and then he goes Workshop Crucible, and suddenly the Wastelands blew up in Chris's face.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Now, Chris is going to play Tabernacle, which gives all creatures an upkeep of 1, which will immediately just kill the Revoker because you can't pay with the Workshop.
Yeah, won't get paid by the Workshop.
I like playing the Jet there. You might as well play around a Sphere of some kind.
Which is certainly not in Eric's deck anymore, right?
He has one in his hand, so...
He has one in his hand?
Yeah, somehow.
Oh, no, I thought the double X casting cost thing that locks him off.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Chalice. Yeah. You're right. Chalices, I think, are gone. Neither player has drawn one in post-board games.
This Spheres that probably just can't board out. Just too much junk in the decks for this matchup.
Yeah, Sphere's fine here. If Chris doesn't draw a Workshop, then this makes it very hard for Chris to play anything. And with Crucible, though, Ifro hasn't revealed that he has a Wasteland yet, which I think is important.
Yeah.
Because Chris
might...
Yeah. I would imagine...
might just think that the Tabernacle is, like, there to stay.
Yeah.
But that can change.
Also, Chris, needs to try to build up towards playing his, Metamorph because he wants to copy Crucible. But... He's going to be a little far away, though. Ifro is going to get double strip mined here. If he plays Wasteland, use it on Chris's Wasteland, obviously Chris is going to waste back. So you have to decide whether you want to commit to that. You could just go Wasteland go, and then see if Chris plays another land.
There's not that much happening for now.
No, the Revoker being gone makes that a little tougher. I guess you can tap Workshop to play Mox. Use the Mox to animate Mishra's Factory, attack with Mishra's Factory, see if Chris Wastelands it, though he probably won't with a Crucible in play. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and Chris kind of needs to get mana into play, right?
Yeah.
He's only got 2 lands that produce mana right now, and there's a Sphere of Resistance in play.
Yeah, the
The
sphere
unexciting.
is not being zero here. It's delaying Metamorph on Crucible by a turn, or delaying Revoker. Seems pretty tough to wasteland here when your opponent's sitting on a Crucible.
Yeah, I don't think I wasted that. I mean, he's got 16 life, can take some more damage.
So if you're Ifro, do you wasteland Chris to keep him off of potentially a 3-mana play if he has a 1-mana land, or a 5-mana play, or 4-mana play if he has a workshop? So a 2-mana and 4-mana play are what you're keeping him off.
I don't think you can waste that. I mean,
It seems
that's
tough.
just like his position isn't that good that you want to do that. Like if you had
Yeah.
1 or 2 creatures in play, I can see it, but
Yeah.
doesn't gain enough from that. I mean, the game is kind of weird that with both players knowing that that Crucible is staying there until the end of the game.
Yeah.
If they had some sort of artifact removal, this would be very different.
And now Chris plays another wasteland, essentially, a ghost quarter. So now Ifro's in the same spot. If he wastes either of them, then he gets wasted back. But at this point, you have to think that if Chris has another non-workshop land, he could play his own Crucible off Metamorph or just Crucible. So you're under a little more pressure to use one of your wastes here.
I probably wouldn't, yeah. I mean, definitely not end of turn.
No. I kind of
There's no
like just
reason to do that.
attacking with Mishra's Factory, wastelanding the wasteland. You get your factory wastelanded, then ghost quartering the ghost quarter. You get your workshop ghost quartered, but it puts Chris down to no mana. At least do one of them. I don't think you want Chris to get an opportunity to get up to 4 mana and then play his own Crucible.
Yep, there we go. Wastelanding has begun.
I think I would have attacked with factory first, but
Killing the workshop seems super dangerous.
yeah,
Like,
because
if Eric had something big in his hand, he could mana source it and then can't play it again, and
Yeah.
suddenly he gets up to 7 mana.
and if Ifro had something to play, I think he would have just tapped workshop and played that thing. I would have probably killed the factory just to take less damage, but I think Ifro should have attacked with factory first, unless he's got some other plan.
I mean, his hand doesn't really have any backup plans right now.
No. There we are.
There's the factory. Yeah, and another wasteland. Yeah, I
And
mean,
last turn Ifro passed on essentially this board, so it makes sense to not want to play anything here. Because now if Chris ever has a non-wasteland land play, then you really start getting him.
which is happening next turn, I suppose. I mean, there's only 2 more wasteland effects in Chris' deck.
Yeah.
Pretty unlikely that there's another one. Yeah, there's a real land.
And if you're Chris, I don't think you can just not play a land there. Because if you stop playing lands, Ifro will just eventually start wastelanding your Ghost Quarter, and then you're never getting out of it.
Shouldn't he lock out the Mox Pearl now with his Revoker? That's what I would have done, I think.
I think you want to play the Revoker and lock Pearl, yeah. Because right now you still can't play
Now he's just doing nothing.
yeah. I mean, the disadvantage of playing Revoker is that you get your Ghost Quarter wastelanded, but the advantage is you have a Revoker in play, and you're going to get wastelanded eventually anyway. Ifro doesn't care too much if he loses his land because he has a Crucible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think getting the creature into play is...
Though it does lock you
helpful.
into paying for it with Tabernacle and your Mox, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, actually. Yeah.
And I guess Revoker's not really going to beat Factory, not with a Crucible in play.
Dismember the factory?
Yeah, the thing about this is, though, is now Ifro gets to play Wasteland and Wasteland the Ghost Quarter.
Yeah, but eventually... yeah, I mean, Chris doesn't... Eric has infinite land drops, so yeah. Like, Chris is going to run out of lands. He only has 1 more in his hand.
Yeah.
This is looking very good for Eric. It's like...
Yeah, Chris needs to draw Workshop. If he draws Workshop, this turn or next turn, he's in okay shape. But now you almost can't even play a land, right? Because now you're just playing... I guess every land you play just delays Factory by 1 turn.
I think you have to play land, yeah.
You could just pass... And then if Ifro plays a Mishra's Factory, then you play a Wasteland, and then if it gets Wastelanded, you waste the Factory back. It's just all delaying tactics.
No. Chris doesn't have a Crucible. Like, he doesn't have Wastelands anymore.
No, he drew a Wasteland for his turn.
Oh, he drew another Wasteland. Okay,
yeah, he drew his 4th waste.
All 4 copies, okay.
If I'm Ephraim, I'm happy just wastelanding here. I don't think you can
Sure,
get away from that.
seems great.
Yeah, nor would you want to. This Tabernacle, it killed a Revoker, which would have basically killed Chris by now, but it's not doing a whole lot past that. I guess that's already good enough. That's enough of a card.
Yeah, we really need the workshop for Chris if he wants to be in this game.
Yeah. And Chris is in a tough spot because if he doesn't play a land, Ifo just starts playing factories and it's just will kill you with Mitchell's factory. Once you get behind on that, you're not going to win.
I mean, Chris on 8 life. It's
Yeah.
not taking all that much.
Ifro's just drawing more Crucibles that don't do anything. The first is so important, though. That's why he's playing 3, of course.
But I mean, you also have the ones in your opponent's deck.
Yeah.
And then Chris has so many copy effects.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any merit to Ifro playing then trying to get an attack in before starting the Wastelands. Because if Chris draws a Crucible, all of a sudden this game is kind of back to parity, or at least close to it.
Yeah, that's probably a good point because like allowing Chris to go up to 3 mana doesn't really do anything. I don't think there's anything for 2 in his deck that does something right now.
And playing a Revoker, really, Ifro's not even unhappy about that because the Tabernacle means that Chris is it just locks one of Chris's lands down, his Mox down.
Well, it means Eric can't attack anymore, but
yeah,
so be it.
Looks like Eric. This is actually similar to Wasteland. I guess it kills Mox Jet, so Revoker Mox Jet is pretty good.
Well, Eric has to pay with his own Mox Pearl, but yeah.
Yeah. It makes attacking with Mishra's Factory harder, but Chris has just drawn all of his strip mines. He drew strip mine, 4 Wastelands, and a Ghost Quarter to this game.
In theory, that's a perfect draw, but then there was Workshop Crucible on the other side of the table.
Chris can go Revoker name Mox Pearl, and then Ifro's Revoker dies.
Yeah, that's probably what he has to do, right?
Oh no, he can't. He can't tap Mox Jet because it's locked down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no. Chris, I guess, just has to pass. He can't really. Wasteland here. That doesn't really get you anything. And playing and attacking with Mishra's Factory is even worse.
I mean, Chris is just drawing to Workshop, I think. Like that's the only
card. Yeah,
he's
been drawing to Workshop the whole game. There were some turns where Ancient Tomb would have done it.
Yeah, but those turns are done by now.
I
you can't afford to. You can't afford to pay 2 life. I don't think.
Yeah, now I think Ifro wants to just Wasteland Mishra's Factory and start attacking with this Revoker. He could see if Chris wants to activate first, but...
Yeah, maybe he just dismembers it now, right? Also, then he can't use the Wasteland anymore, never mind. Oh, he couldn't even dismember, never mind. Yeah. Sphere of Resistance, stopping that. 3 more attacks from Ferguson and Revoker.
Yeah. So even if, let's say Chris draws Workshop, he can only play... He has to play Metamorph, naming, going down to 4 to copy Crucible. That doesn't actually sound that good still. Because he can't play Lodestone Golem because of the Sphere.
And yeah, and then he gets attacked to 2 and Eric recasts Mishra from his graveyard.
Yeah, and if he plays Revoker, then Eric can just kill the Wasteland and then the Revoker dies to the Tabernacle. Precursor Golem, not going to be castable here, but... Yeah, Eric sees the end in sight well enough that he's playing the Mana Crypt just so he can pay for Dismembers or activate factories, I guess.
I mean, Chris actually hasn't done anything this game. Like, if you look at his graveyard, he's played 10 lands, a Mox, and a Dismember.
Yeah, he's put 2 spells in the stack and he's played 10 lands.
And one of the spells was a Mox, yeah. So that usually doesn't win you a vintage game. I mean, maybe, like, if there's a chance that wins you a vintage game, it's probably in this matchup.
Yes, this is the matchup where that could have been good enough.
It didn't turn out to be good enough. I think Chris' hand is just completely useless, right? I don't think anything...
Well, Chris can't cast a spell right now because of the Sphere. So his only decisions are whether he wants to use one of his strip mines on the Workshop. And that's not much of a decision.
I mean, yeah, he can't do that. I don't think... I mean, no. Eric would very happily trade his Workshop against one of Chris's lands.
Oh yeah, if Eric could strip mine with a Workshop, he would definitely do that.
Yeah. Mana Crypt in play too.
Yeah,
Certainly doesn't need the workshop anymore.
Ifro figuring the game's going to last probably not more than 3 or 4 turns, so he's pretty safe on Mana Crypt. And now this way also if he draws like a Lodestone Golem, he can play it. Though I guess he could have gone Ancient Tomb there, but you'd still rather be able to play a Wasteland. Drawing Mishra's Factory, which is just a blank because there's already one in your graveyard to play, but
Yeah, drawing lands is very unexciting. But yeah, that looks like Eric is going up to 5-0.
Ifro does it again.
Chris still looking pretty good at 4-1, and then he gets to beat me next round, so.
Now we're going to oath up so many Ingot Chewers against Chris.
Yeah, like, maybe I should just board in more creatures in general, so I don't kill myself with oaths.
Yeah, you did have
if I
that
have
problem.
Ingot Chewer, yeah, like with Ingot Chewers, that's not going to happen.
So, because this isn't going anywhere super fast, I think game 1, when you oathed up the Gristlebrand, I think you wanted to draw down to 4 life and discard Emrakul to shuffle your deck, and then maybe you have a chance next turn.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you would have had to draw something next turn too, and he would have had to not have much, but it gives you a shot at least.
Yeah, the way I played that was just bad.
You played to him having no cards, which, I mean, wasn't super likely.
Yeah, that seems very far-fetched. Like, he already had like 5 lands in play.
Yeah. Though game 3 he had that. He had like 6 land in play and 4 in hand game 3 somehow.
Well, he did Kush, so yeah. But
yeah.
Obviously he had pretty bad draws. Second cage is also not very exciting.
Yeah.
There's a Tabernacle, Mana Crypt.
So now Ifro's going to play Wasteland to Wasteland the Mishra's Factory, attack Grist down to 2, and then I don't know what Chris can draw. I mean, given that the Mox Jet is not active, he can't cast anything. He can cast his own Revoker, but then Ifro can dismember it.
You can cast a Revoker if he draws a Workshop.
Yes.
Yeah, that still doesn't do anything.
If he exactly draws Workshop.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, that block. Bad news, Chris. Two games decided by Phyrexian Revoker beatdown.
Hey, at least this time it was naming something. The other times it wasn't naming anything. Like, the things it named never showed up. This time, naming the jet was very relevant. Oh, the slap in the face, the Ancient Tomb. Chris is probably going to tap the Ancient Tomb now.
That's a stylish way. Yep.
Yeah.
There we go. Who's Eric playing against next week?
That's a good question.
For all the marbles.
Yep. So Eric wins to advance to 5-0. He's obviously far in the lead, though Chris is either going to be second or tied for second, depending on how my match goes this week. So Chris is in pretty good shape as well. Next up, we've got Rich Shea against Tom Martell with Delver versus Gifts, and Bob and I will be doing the commentary on that one.
That's actually, yeah, I mean, that's probably a good matchup for the Delver deck, right? I mean, I would think that the Delver deck is just built to beat these decks.
Not only is it built to beat the Gifts decks, I've been playing a lot of Gifts online, and I don't think it's a good deck. So, I mean, maybe someone will get to a list that is good, but right now, I don't see Gifts Ungiven as being a great card in Vintage, which is just unfortunate. I mean, I love that card. It's just paying 4 mana to then untap and win the game if you have another 4 or 5 mana lying around is kind of not what you want to be doing right now.
Seems easier to just cast Doomsday and win that turn.
Or cast Dig Through Time, or cast, Gush or Treasure Cruise, or any of those cards, yeah. So, we'll take a quick break here, and then we'll be back with Rich Shea against Tom Martell. Thanks for the commentary, and have a good night.
Yeah, thanks for watching. See you around next week.